Hi, today we're gonna talk about what is global distributed team and how it's different from offshore teams, and when it is a good time to go globally, and what are the challenges when you have a global distributed team. And today, to answer this question, we have a special guest, Sanjay Prajapati. He's an engineering manager at Realtor.com. He used to work at companies like Bluemark, Patch of Land, and many other tech companies. He built global team over 100 people. And welcome, Sanjay. Sanjay, what is global distributed teams? What's the difference between offshore team and global distributed team?
So they both are conceptual. It's just how people perceive about both of those. There is a perception about offshore team is that most of the companies and specifically people that I work with, they think that, we go offshore route to save some budget, save some money and whatnot. When I call the globally distributed team, I look at it as a talent in expanding our outreach for having talented folks in our team rather than worrying about budget or not. It says that you have to give up something to gain something, right? Either it is money, either it is your time, your effort, whatever it is. There's without a pain, there's no gain. So that's the approach that I look at it. Is when you look at globally distributed team, meaning that it's not about budgetary constraint, or you're just going to any market for a cheap labor or some like low level engineers or data entry folks or support staff. It's more of, I would look at it as you're expanding your team. You're removing that boundary. You're removing that geofence that you have created. And it's just a mindset of people where they think that having people in the same office may have different effect than person who is sitting like many miles away from your office. It certainly does. I'm not saying that one-on-one, face-to-face doesn't have any effect. It definitely have an effect. But what I'm trying to say is nowadays, Evgeny, you are hiring for your clients. Hiring is so much challenge. I know I've been in that shoe for many years. It's not easy. You are going through so many resumes. You are applying so many filters. And basically you are just limiting yourself because you have those filters. And one of that filter is geofence. Either that geofence is city-wise, region-wise, country-wise, whatever that is. As soon as you remove that, you have a lot more opportunity. So sometimes you have to settle with whatever you have in your filter, and that may work out, may not. It's a big may, and it is sometimes a risk. I have been there. I have hired folks in the past, and because of geofencing, I have to deal with whatever I can have, and the consequences were the high turnaround. I'm not trying to say that opening up a geofence will not result in higher or lower turnaround, because turnaround is different based that the engineering leaders or leader in general are cautious about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's basically you're saying it's two different approaches. The first approach, usually, as is many people think that, offshore team is just to reduce the cost of engineering, and but to be honest, I think it's not the really case. It's getting more issues than you just reducing the cost.
Yep.
But the second approach is hey, we're not looking for just we're not looking actually reducing the cost. We're looking to get the best talent across the world, right?
Absolutely. And that's what the globally distributed team is. We are same team, either you work here or there or wherever in the world, right?
Interesting. So from that, just from that approach, the whole mindset should be different then, right?
Absolutely.
Can
And
you, yeah, can you a little bit explain what the mindset should be when for those two approaches?
absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a different mindset. Throughout now, if we look at pre-pandemic, right? And I'm always saying that there is one thing if pandemic has done good for people is that they have, and this goes for employee and employer as well. They and many employers were thinking, trying out remote model. I've always been out lookout for reading those articles and following up with those companies. Even it's not that, oh yeah, pandemic and they're being forced. It's just that they did not have, before pandemic, they did not have enough time to focus on that. They were always focused on the business and whatnot. But the remote option, the global option, were always back of their mind. With pandemic, it allowed them, either we call it by force or whatever it is, but it gives them an opportunity to see if this remote option can be as productive, or maybe in some cases more productive than people coming to the office. In some businesses, as you see now, many companies, even more like unicorns, they were announcing that they are going now remote first approach. And after the pandemic, I'm seeing that many companies, at least in the IT sector, tech world, they are going to be very, very open-minded. If not 100% remote, there will be somewhat hybrid option available. Mostly that I'm seeing. But talking about mindset is, it's people are more opening up now. They see that it's not only potential candidates are here or there. When they see remote first approach and when they see that it is working, why not then extend it beyond the boundaries, beyond your geofencing, and see if that works. So now one experience that they have in their mind, the pandemic helped them by force or whatever we call it to experience it. Now they see that the productivity somewhat either similar, in some cases is increasing. Then they are now open to trying out to globally distributed team approach, where they look at it is they are the same team as we are.
Yeah, definitely. Because, I definitely with the pandemic, it shifted. And when before we had offshore team or international team and onshore team, now everybody is remote basically,
Yeah.
right? And everybody's on the same boat. And I think this is a great thing because, again, like I used to work with several companies. I would say most of them, they had different approaches. uh, I would say 3 out of 5 companies, they treated their offshore team unfortunately as expendables.
Mm-hmm.
Like okay, we'll just like vendors. Like okay, we'll just change the vendor and that's it. And the work was basically stopped, and nothing. I mean, it was a disaster, to be honest. I used to work with a QA, in a QA, and with offshore QA team as well. So, and Q, onshore QA leads and QA managers that treated them differently. You know, uh, that's so. What do you think should be done to to shift this thing towards to?
Yeah, and I think we touch up a little bit upon this. Is why? So the bigger question is, why do we have to treat that like that, right? Um, my mindset and my one sense on this is basically treat them as a similar team as you are treating your onshore. Look at it as a one global team rather than, hey, you are my vendor, so yeah, whatever, and then this is just my team is just here, core team. No, your team is more than that. They are also producing, they are also working for. So what that they are just support engineers? So what that they are just a junior engineer? Eventually, they can become also senior folks, right? Um, and I would just remove two concept, budget and talent, separately. Look them as a talented folks rather than, yeah, they are here so that we can we can have some wiggle room around our budget. That is, in my opinion, somewhat hurting the business. If we just remove that barrier, don't worry about the budget, look at the right talent and groom them, teach them, and basically teach them our culture, how we work, right? I come from Indian culture, and when I came here, and when I started working, and till nowadays, I still have somewhat fact of that culture. It's basically, somewhat, and I think I would say I had some advantage over that, is because I have exposure of two cultures. But one thing that I have done right and I would like to expand it here, explain it for folks, is that understand your folks, learn their culture, what it is before you saying yes or no to them. And more importantly, teach them how you work, how your culture is. And when I say culture, I'm not talking about American culture or not, how your company work, how you particularly work, how you want them to work, and sell them on a vision, right? Have them feel like they are inclusive, create this inclusive environment. And that goes much more beyond, honestly. You will feel like in first couple of months you have to do a lot more, because you're dealing with now off hours and offshore and globally team that are not in same time zone. I would say it's just a matter of few weeks. If you do these steps, give them, sell them on a vision, teach them your culture. This is what it is. I'm more of a productive guy. If, as long as you are productive, I will support you in your career and whatnot. It's just being that career coach leader that goes way further. You will see that result in few weeks. And treat them as the same way that you are treating your internal team. The result will be phenomenal. You will see night and day kind of difference. And again, all this is just different mindset. All you have to do as an engineering leader or organization leader is just change your mindset and start working with them. I always think that they are working with me, not for me. Either if I'm like manager, head of engineering, whatever you call it, every person that they report me, they're working with me, not for me.
Interesting. And it's just one part of the challenges, right? Working with international global teams, because first, obviously, there are cultural boundaries, uh, language boundaries. Um, what else? Like, what kind of challenges you also see that needs to be overcome in order to build great, efficient global team?
Absolutely. So I think we touch a couple of points here. Number one is definitely culture differences, but I also wanted to say specifically in tech world that culture differences is becoming slimmer and slimmer, and the reason is the information availability of the information. The internet is now widely available. Even in those countries where it's developing countries, because of the access of internet, they have much more information about many companies and many culture and whatnot. That is becoming slimmer. The major challenge that I'm seeing is the time difference. How you can utilize the time, because sometimes, for example, if your company is in Pacific time zone and if you wanted to expand into India, that is almost 12 hours difference. So it's night and day kind of thing. So how you can effectively organize your team so that you can have much more productivity from your team, rather than your team is lagging always, because internal team and external team, they are trying to catch up with each other, right? So
Right.
in my opinion, that is way more important, and also it has a downside as well. So that's why some companies, they're very, very hesitant. And number one is because of that, and number two is not that many people, they wanted to invest much more time and their energy on off hours. So those are challenges for sure, but with right approach, there are solutions too.
Absolutely. So, can you tell how you can overcome, like, what are the approaches to overcome those challenges, especially with the time difference? I think it's one of the biggest challenge.
Yes. Time difference is absolutely one of the biggest challenge, and I have two mentalities that I always tell my peers and my leadership team, is that there's two way to think about when we talk about globally distributed team. Number one is most of the teams that we talk about, either in Asian market, India, Vietnam, sometimes in Ukraine, they're always ahead of us, right? Because they are on the ish side of us. So I would say is they are always X number of hours ahead of us. And the second approach that you look at it is, because they are ahead of us, and if there is no advanced planning, they can be 1 day or 1.5 day behind of us. First approach is definitely an advantage. Second approach is basically, like I said, you are just trying to do a play catch game. So it's put a little bit more pressure on you as a leader to plan it out. But again, planning is not a bad thing, right? If you plan it out really well, then you can take an advantage of them being always ahead of you. Meaning that if you are planned, let's say on Friday, for example, a task, or you are working on a task and you're half baked there, and you said, okay, Monday I'll do that, but you know that you have a counterpart that works for you, who is going to start working when you are sleeping on Sunday night. That's the best example, because on Monday morning you wake up and then your half-baked code or half-baked solution is now fully baked. So it goes hand in hand with collaboration, planning, in advanced manner, right? So you always being proactive rather than reactive approach. And that actually also naturally increase the inclusive environment. It create a lot more diversity. And also being that inclusive, sometimes you get a good, solid, healthy debate, and you get a solid solution out of it. Because sometimes, you as an engineer, you have one way to solve it. If you do it in a collaborative manner with your counterpart, you never know that there may be some nuances that you are overlooking, where they're basically pointing out some of the use cases, some of the edge cases, and you work so many years in QA, Evgeny, by yourself. All this, right?
Right.
In tech world, there is no such one engineer in the world right now who did not make any mistakes. There is no such thing as a bug-free code. But with collaboration, you can just eliminate much of the bugs. Those are obvious bugs, and you can just eliminate those before it even goes to production or not.
Sanjay, one more thing that I also mentioned about challenges that we didn't mention here, that especially people who is in US, I know that many engineers, they don't want to work with a global team, just because not only the time difference, even if it's a planned, if it's a good plan, but there's always urgency, right? There are always something, urgent ticket or hot fix or something like that, which require, not always, but most of the time, to be on the call. Yes. Late night calls, right? I think this is one of the most frustrating thing that working globally. So what do you think, how that issue could be also solved, if it could be solved?
That is a tricky question, for sure. And it goes person by person, honestly. But to the degree it can be solved, and there are a couple of scenarios. And by the way, I wanted to go back to the sentence where you said that many engineers does not want to deal with offshore. I have actually a different experience. Many engineers that I work onshore, they really like their offshore or global counterpart, and they're always collaborative. But you're right, when it comes to hotfix or urgent manner, they tend to take things in their hand rather than waiting for their offshore counterpart. And the reason why it is sometimes it may require collaboration on cross-functional team, which may or may not be, require face-to-face meetings and whatnot. There are so many reasons. There are so many nuances here that we are looking at. Sometimes it requires for people to have a meeting, and that meeting has to be very, very urgent, where your global counterpart may be sleeping, or it's just off hour for them. So it's always setting an example or expectation, I would say. And having some sort of overlap would definitely solve this to some degree. I'm not saying it will solve 100%, because there will be this scenario where you as an engineering leader or leader of your team, you would rather prefer to have somebody locally work on this issue than the global person. But to some degree, you can solve some of the challenges here particularly this topic, is by having overlap, having clear communication. um, and one thing that I already mentioned before is that selling them a clear vision about your project product. Because if your globally counterpart is have the vision of the product, he's well versed of the product, he's working with you, you have invested your time and energy to groom that resource. Now you can also put some trust on that resource as well. So eventually then you can assign some of those hot fixes to your counterpart as well.
Sanjay, would you be able to give a practical advice or best practices how to deal with late night calls when one team have to be on urgent meetings with another team? It can happen in some companies. This can be happen once in a week or once in a month or even more often. But what do you think about it?
Yeah. I mean, best practices is always have that expectation, but more importantly, have some overlap between two teams. Either it is 2 hours or 1 hour, whatever that is, and then you ask your team to schedule cognizant enough time so that if you have 1 hour with your global counterpart, then utilize that 1 hour for information sharing, any collaboration that you want to do, rather than focusing on just heads down and coding, because many engineers love that.
Yeah.
Is that when they are in the zone, they just don't want to get bothered, and I was one of them too. I was engineer myself as well. But sometimes you just have to manage your time right accordingly, because you may have like 8-9 hours for certain things to be done in whatnot. So most of the time that is your only chance to talk to your colleague who is not with you. He's offshore, he's many miles away from you, and that is, I would say, day-to-day basis. Sometimes on the emergency or one-off things, I think it's more of a culture thing, to be honest, and how you have the whole team put together. Meaning that if you don't have solid team behind you, where you are not going toward the destination as a team, then that could be an issue. In my experience, I work with globally distributed team for 5 years from now, and it's not that we never have this issue. We all the issue that you have explained, it's always be there. Who wanted to work at 9 p.m., 10 p.m. During the night time? Right? Nobody. Either you're here or there. Nobody. It's not pleasant, right? But how I eliminate or at least work around this problem is that how can I compensate? And when I say compensation, I'm not talking about money or whatnot. I'm talking about being a leader, being a manager. How can we do that successfully? Either to give them this vision and show them, because most of the time, honestly, when engineering works, they may or may not know the impact of the business side of it, and that may sometimes helpful is that you can show them your work that you're doing is going to impact the business. And guess what? If the business grows, you grow too. The second thing, so that is the connection between their effort and the business. Any small thing that they do, there is a reason why they work for the company, right? And as long as you tie that vision with that reason, you are golden. The second thing that really helped me and worked for me is that people generally, they are not, I mean, they are looking for a small appreciation, small celebration, right? And all that goes way further than you just tell them about, hey, you have to do this because we have to launch this. Rather than doing that, why not just push them toward the same goal, and take them with you. You are not telling them to stay up at 10 p.m. while you are sleeping with your family. You are just sticking with them. Tell him that, hey, I'll be there to, even if you're just there to listening. It shows the appreciation for your team, because you as a leader, you are there, right? You are not telling your engineers to, hey, just deal with this, and I'm gonna go do party with my friend. I'm gonna go to the pub and have some beer with my friend. Be that leader where, hey, we have this issue, you guys are fixing. I'll be there to support. I'll be there on the Zoom call. Whatever you need me, I'll be there.
Awesome. I think, yeah, that's a great examples. I wish that most of hiring managers and engineering managers would have similar mindset. Can you share some maybe tools, tactics, how to manage your global distributed team?
Absolutely. And when we talk about tools and tactics, many people, I mean, this is not a secret sauce anymore, right? There are so many tools out there. It's just more about how you collaborate with your team, either with video chat, and video chat helps me a lot when I talk to remote people, because it's not similar to face, but it is the best option that is available at that time, because you are remote. It's not feasible for you to be one-on-one, but at least you are one-on-one on the video. You can see each other,
like we do right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that is that connection. The eye contact is there. So in my opinion, having that video chat is a little bit more important than having just Slack messages and whatnot. The tactics is, I think we talk about a lot, is collaboration, selling them vision, being the inclusive environment, being the diverse team, and being open-minded as a leader, as a people manager. I have a philosophy that I don't know everything. I don't know how to solve everything. But one thing that I know is my team knows many things, and I have a team that is skilled enough to solve problems that will come to my way. And I have no doubt about that, any ability of any members of my team. And that's the mentality that I grew in as an engineering manager, as an engineering leader. And it really helps me throughout this many years.
Awesome. Sanjay, I think I would be happy to be on your team, to be honest. Anyway, thank you very much for today's session. You gave a lot of insights, especially working. I think it's a very hot topic at this moment. How to work with global distributed teams. How to not treat global distributed team as an offshore expandable team or something like that, right? It's a
Right.
completely different mindset and the different results and different outcomes, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and people, I mean, please, I will leave your LinkedIn profile in the link down below so they can reach out to you there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, and I'll see you next time then.
For sure. Yeah. Pleasure is mine. And thank you for having me. It's just great chatting with you.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you.
All right. Take care.